Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome back to Plain Speak, where we delve into the intersection of technology and customer support. So joining us today is Bernard Slowey, Vice President of Digital Customer Success at Salesforce, for an in-depth conversation on digital transformation and customer service. Super excited for this. Bernard began his career in customer service during college in Ireland and progressed the roles at Microsoft, including leading the worldwide Windows 10 rollout from a support perspective. Some really cool stories there. Bernard joined Salesforce about 3 years ago when a job opened up that was tailor-made for him. How do you create self-service customer success tools that support customers with tech-enabled resolutions as well as education? Since taking the role, Bernard's tenure at Salesforce has been marked by continuously leveraging automation and digital solutions for customer success. I'm sure everyone here is familiar with Salesforce and needs no introduction in how it helps businesses interact with their customers globally. But today I'm excited to take a peek under the hood with how it runs its massive customer support experience and success apparatus. Under Bernard's stewardship, the company is enhancing digital customer success, making it more efficient and accessible. So I'm Liz, your host, CEO, and founder of High Operator, the leading customer support solution that scales dynamically based on a company's evolving needs. Our tools, including Highlight AI and High Auto, leverage a little bit of NLP, workflow automation, a little bit of generative AI to handle complex customer requests. So for our listeners, especially if you're joining us for the first time, if you have questions or comments, please feel free to put them in the chat wherever you're reading or wherever you're listening to this. We will try to address them during this session or otherwise follow up on LinkedIn later. So let's begin. Bernard, thank you so much for joining us and a huge welcome.
Thank you. It's kind of weird when you hear someone talk about you like that. It's like, is that me who did them things? So thank you for having me, Liz. I've been listening to a lot of your sessions. You've had some great speakers on. So thank you for having me. Really appreciate it.
Absolutely. I'm beyond excited to dive into some of those exciting adventures that we just briefly touched on. And so maybe to begin with, Bernard, you spent a 15-year tenure at Microsoft, pivotal time, lots of significant accomplishments, probably touched a lot of people's lives, including mine, with that Windows 10 rollout. Can you share a little bit more about your key achievements there and how they were instrumental in preparing you for your role at Salesforce?
Yeah, hopefully touch your life positively, by the way, is what I would say there. So I spent 15 years at Microsoft. It was an incredible journey. I often tell people I grew up at Microsoft. I started there when we were launching like Windows 8, which wasn't the best Windows in the world, but I led Windows support for Microsoft when we launched Windows 10. And just to give you some idea of scale, that was support across 132 markets. At its peak, we had about 3,500 agents. And Windows 10 was the fastest operating system that Microsoft ever released. It was a free operating system that worked on prior versions of Windows. So pretty much anybody could upgrade it to it. And we, Microsoft, were on the hook for support versus usually it might have been like your OEMs, like your Dells and HPs. But because it was free, we kind of had to manage that support. So it was a massive learning on how to scale because we couldn't scale with just human beings. There's only so many support agents you could have. We spent a lot of our time thinking through the end-to-end experience that our customers would go through with a massive focus on digital and self-service. Like, how do we enable capabilities that's going to answer questions for them? Like, can my device upgrade? We built an upgrade checker, etc., to help with all of this. So it really kind of put me down the path of like really focusing on self-service and digital. It really honed my skills around that. Of a lot of what I do at Salesforce today is like, how do we think about that self-service experience so it wows customers and ultimately they don't need to contact support?
Absolutely. That's such a good point, right? Because it was direct to Microsoft. There wasn't any OEM on the hook.
Yeah.
And there's no dry run for rolling out a new software platform to literally millions and millions of users.
Yeah, it was pretty incredible. It was an amazing time when I reflect back on it. It was a stressful time, I'll be honest with you. If any of my old team are on the call, they would say that as well. And we had to manage a lot, but we got through it. We drove the fastest launch that Microsoft ever had. We didn't have issues. I think I was worried about like a press release of Microsoft wait times for support was terrible or something related to it. And we didn't have any of them issues. It was pretty incredible.
Yeah, absolutely. And it sounds like a lot of the focus there, you said, was in the customer experience almost before installation, right, with the update checker, and then also before contact in terms of really guiding them through with education and getting them to the right.
Exactly. Exactly. Human-centered design, really thinking through that experience that your customers have to go through end to end, making sure you're thinking through all them touch points, the seams, etc., and planning it and designing it. That's what you really have to do.
Fascinating. Now, Windows is obviously a big mix of probably business users as well as casual users and consumers. You know, tell me about how we talked about how this sort of has translated into your work on digital customer support success at Salesforce. How has that sort of paralleled a little bit in terms of how you brought that thinking over?
Yeah, we often talk about like I think advances tend to start in B2C. Like you tend to see things quicker in B2C than you do in B2B. So I often try and take my consumer life as the examples of what we need to do in business because let's be honest, things like some of these AI solutions, GPT solutions will tend to start with them in a consumer space and see do they work for consumers before maybe you want to light it up for a bank or a big enterprise, etc. So I'm always looking at consumer and trying to learn and think from consumer. So that was an advantage for me growing up there, I guess. But yeah, to your point, Salesforce is B2B. And in a B2B space, you got to nail things. It's got to be perfect before you're putting it in front of your customers. That's really important to us.
That makes a ton of sense. And it's an interesting point on that sort of consumer testing bed and then dragging that up into enterprise. Because to maybe double click for 1 second, Windows 10 rollout was 2015, right?
Yeah. Yeah,
And
yeah. Because it was that long ago. Wow. Yeah.
yesterday. Um,
Yeah.
so 2015, the consumer behavior there, was it a little bit different? Were they less used to self-service? Was that something y'all had to think through when
I
designing?
don't I don't think so. Like I often tell my team, like, nobody wakes up in the morning and says, I want to contact support. And I don't mean that as a dig at support people. I grew up, I spent all my life in support. Unfortunately, through many companies, we've created an industry that's put people off picking up that phone and calling a support agent. And so even back then, I think that was still the case. People start off on Google. People go to YouTube. YouTube is the second biggest search engine in the world after Google. We have a Salesforce support YouTube channel because we want to be there because we know our customers are there. And I think
Right.
even in 2015, customers were doing that as well. So you got to start with self-service. You got to start with Google. We do a ton of focus on SEO. I have an SEO experience manager on my team. She's amazing. And normally that's a role that tends to be marketing related. But we think about that as people search in Google. How do you make sure that your content is some of the first things that comes up in Google that's relevant for them? And I think even in 2015, that was still the case, Liz. People start in Google. That's where they want to search. And so you got to design your experience from Google.
Makes a ton of sense. So that's sort of the external experience, meeting your customers where they are. Now, you've
Yeah.
talked, sorry, in our conversations, a lot about sort of the internal approach as well for Salesforce internal tools and
Yeah.
roll out to your team. How do you think about that?
Yeah, I'm incredibly lucky that I work for one of the biggest technology companies in the world. And so I always want to be customer zero for our own product teams. We have Einstein, we have Copilot, we have things like search answers, where all these technologies starting to leverage large learning models. And what better place to put them than in self-service, And so we make sure we're customer zero. We use our products first. We work with our engineering teams to give feedback on them products, what's working, what's not working. Often will be, hey, we try and roll this thing out, and this is some of the issues that we're having. So it's amazing for us that we get to leverage our technologies, and we'll still use, best in class. We have an amazing thing in Salesforce called App Exchange, where we've lots of great partners that are on App Exchange, and we'll still use some of their technologies with our Salesforce technologies. But that's one of the advantages I have is leveraging these great capabilities that we have at Salesforce.
Sure, just client zero for all of those
Yeah,
really new
yeah,
apps and tools.
yeah,
Interesting. So a lot of the things that we've just talked about now, right? Thinking about SEO, meeting the customer where they're searching for it, really designing the experience. This falls under a category that maybe some CS leaders would consider to be sort of deflection, right? Deflecting customers away from sort of a direct reach out. But you've expressed that that's really not how you like to think about connecting with your customers, especially from your time at Microsoft.
yeah. You saw my face kind of turn as you said that because we chatted about this a little bit. Yeah, I hate the term deflection. I'm on like this power journey to try and get it out of our industry. But
Yeah.
I think if you brought a customer into a room and said, "Hey, we deflected you," how would they feel about that? It's the opposite of customer obsession, right? Because what happens is it starts to drive behaviors where people start to do things to make it hard for your customer to contact you.
Yep.
And we've all lived that experience, right? You try and find some company's phone number, you try and get through their case submission process in their help portal. It's 18 clicks until you can get there, etc. And so we actually think about self-service as self-help success. How do we
Mm.
enable our customers to be successful with self-service? Because again, we know they want to do that, right? We know they want to self-serve. We still make it very easy for them to raise a case. Like our case submission page it's like a Google experience. They type in what their problem is. We give them the recommendation of what that product and issue is, and then they can go through to support. So it's 3 clicks, but if you do self-service, great, right? You're giving customers choice. You create experiences that delight them in self-service. Most of the time they'll choose that, and then they'll go to contact support maybe when they have that real emergency. This is where I really need you. So I do hate the word deflection. I think it drives the wrong behaviors. And so we really focus on that self-service, self-help success is how we think about it.
Makes a ton of sense. And it sounds like so much of this is really understanding your customer and your customer's behavior. And you're not trying to hide from them, right? You're not trying to
No.
select and hide. You're really trying to say, okay, well, how can we, in a way that's faster and better than raising a case and speaking to us, get your solution right out the gate?
Exactly, exactly. Like, and we just finished our fiscal year, we started our new fiscal year in February, and so I was just looking at our numbers yesterday, Liz. Like we had about 96 million visits across some of our help portal sites last year, driven by about 26.2 million users. So users can have multiple visits, but we had about 1 million cases. And so that shows you, like, for a B2B company to have that scale on our portals, that many customers come into it, and that little cases, like we look at things like case rate, obviously, like many other companies do. It shows you we're doing a pretty good job. A lot of our customers are finding what they need on our portal, whether that's knowledge articles, product docs, videos. Our community is an incredible resource where customers can find answers from other questions that were asked. So there's all these channels we enable to help our customers get to that self-service.
Makes sense. Now, if I looked at just those metrics alone, right, 1 million contacts on nearly 100 million visits, one might, if you just looked at that metric, you might say you did a great job deflecting, right? But we're not going to say that. But tell me a little bit about how you instrument beyond that metrics. I think what we talked about that
Yeah,
really insightful was you're not just looking at visits to contact. There's a
no.
lot more along the way.
Yeah, and just before I jump in here, Liz, I think that's one of the things I find, and again, I grew up in support, I come from it, is support organizations are very good at operational metrics for contact centers. Everybody knows the metrics. It's,
Handle time.
average handle time, but yet when it comes to self-service digital, I sometimes find it's a little bit of an afterthought. And I think that's why you're seeing more roles like mine exist in the industry where you have a team, people that are focused on self-service. And with that, we have metrics that we drive to. Self-help success, you mentioned that one earlier on. We also look at something called digital CSAT. So normally CSAT is transactional. You engage with an agent, you get a CSAT survey. We actually have CSAT survey appear at moments in time in our journey on our portal, etc. The same question, it's a 5-point scale. We can measure it. It allows us to look at the verbatim that customers have typed in. We use an ML model to classify that verbatim. So CSAT, we call it digital CSAT. That's the other big one for us. But then the third one we do look at is case rate, right? Because ultimately, if me and my team are doing a good job, we are a very big impact on case rate. You drive case rate down 2 ways. You improve your product, so customers never have an issue, or you make self-service amazing. You do both is great, right? And so that drives down case rate. So they're the metrics that my team are really focused on from a strategic KPI. We have other ones. We've operational metrics we look at, things like load times for our help portal, etc. But it's really around self-help success, digital CSAT, and case rate. They're where we really focus.
Fascinating. It's a lot more than just that contact rate.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes.
Now, okay, so you talked about how you look at the data, know what customers are typing in. You can use ML models to classify and really get insights from that because no one can read 100 million submissions.
Yes.
Are there any examples of where you've actually been able to use that to actually then close the product feedback loop and drive action that way?
Yeah. I'll give you a great real life example that happened a few months ago. So we look, as I mentioned earlier on, we look at like things like our help portal, which is where customers come to submit case and get content. We look at load times. How fast is it loading? You want that to be fast. You want it to like a consumer product. And we were kind of looking at the number at a global level. And it was a learning for me. We should have been clicked down into that and looking at regions and countries. But what we noticed is on our CSAT survey, specifically for India, we started to get a classification of slowness. Hey, my page is loading slowly for content, etc. And so that enabled us to double click and find out something was wrong in India. I won't bore people on our CDN solution that we had over there that helps with load times, etc. But it identified to us that we had an issue. We quickly found out where that issue was. We fixed it and we resolved it, because it's important to us that no matter what country our customers are in, it's a fast experience for them to use our portal, especially when they're reading content, etc. So that's just one example. There's so many, Liz. Like, we use this for product management, right? How do we drive feature enhancements in our portal? Like the other example I'll give you, like when I joined, our case submission page was, I'm not lying, it was probably about 18 things that a customer had to do. They had to select the product, the topic, a tick box for this, what about this, why are you here? And many companies do that, right? But we started to see the feedback on how terrible that was. And as I mentioned earlier on, we've really simplified that down now to this Google-like experience. Type in your issue, we'll tell you what product you're using, we'll tell you what we think that topic is. You pick whether you want chat, whether you want click to call, and you submit your case.
Makes sense. It's everything you can do to just smooth that experience, both
Exactly.
pre and during contact,
Yeah.
for the customer.
Yeah.
Okay, so one thing that's really striking me here is your ability to do all of this is in part because you have sort of first-in-class access to data, instrumentation, and you can sort of dive into regions and every part of that piece, right? But the other thing that you sort of hinted on throughout this conversation is this sort of integration and different structure across the organization, right? Like, you have an SEO experience manager that in some orgs might be in marketing, but you have in digital customer success. Tell me a little bit more about where your role fits versus your
Yeah.
traditional contact center management role and how that's driven success.
Yeah. I'll up level a little bit, and then I'll come down to that. I often find with companies that digital is where they show their org charts. And what I mean by that is, like, you'll have a success team, you'll have a support team, you'll have a training team, and they tend to have different portals, different websites related to that thing. And you kind of can see, I can nearly tell their org chart by how their website structure is set up.
Fascinating.
And we were the same at Salesforce. We had a success organization. Salesforce kind of invented customer success. We had a success organization, we had a support organization, we had a training organization, and each one of them organizations had a separate customer facing portal. Now, you think about that from a customer experience perspective, right? Where do I go? Like, it's up to the customer. Like, is this a success scenario? Is this a support scenario? Like, how do I figure that out? And
Interesting.
then, and then the other thing, which is, I come back to Google, is you make it very, very difficult for Google to know what to provide in your search results, because you're kind of competing against yourself. You're competing against your different portals in the company. It starts to give lots of different, so customers don't know where to go. They get confused. So we've been on a journey at Salesforce through our incredible leader, Jim Roth. He's our president for customer success, where we've brought success, support, and training together into one organization. And with that example I gave you earlier on, we no longer have a customer success portal. We brought the best of that portal into our help portal, which was owned by our support team. And we're working to bring something called Trailhead Academy, which is kind of like our training services, into that portal in the future as well. So that's a perfect example of, you have to have your organization structure right, Liz, to start to bring these things together. Because what happens when your structure is not right? Politics get in the way, right? People are like, well, I own this thing, it's part of my team, and so I really care about this. They stop thinking about the customer, right? When you bring the teams together, you're quickly able to go, well, why do we have this thing over here? That should just all be one. And so my team has grown significantly with that. I'm our vice president for digital customer success. I have a number of functions underneath me that kind of manage that portal experience, our community, etc. And that
Yeah.
has grown as these organizations have come together. I partner extremely closely with our teams that run our delivery organizations, so like our support deliveries, because a lot of the times them teams have the subject matter expertise for what you want to put in self-service.
Makes
What do
sense.
what do I mean by that is like you have a high case rate. There's probably a support engineer that has all the knowledge about how to solve that case rate. So you want to
Yep.
work with that support engineer to get that content available on your portal, to get a video created for YouTube. So and then ultimately what we want to do is drive down that case rate for that top contact driver for that cloud. And so huge connection, huge partnership into our support delivery team. Nothing we can do, it can't happen without that team.
That makes a ton of sense. And it sounds like there's synergy and collaboration, but there's also consolidation and alignment across incentives, right? Versus
Yes.
completely different orgs. You have your contact center metrics, they've got deflection, they've got total handle time, they've got all of that. But then you are unifying that against, okay, we're not solving it at point of contact. We're saying, how can we shift that and move that into knowledge and help
Exactly.
all of that?
Exactly. And then when you've created the knowledge, how do you make sure customers get to that knowledge? Right. So that's things like SEO. Like we're investing a lot now in Copilot and our Einstein bot capabilities, right? It's another great way to serve content to a customer is for that to be in a conversational UI. So we're
Yeah.
always looking at what's the best way to bring that content to a customer because content can be in many forms. That's why often we'll create a video. Some customers just love videos, or it kind of boggles my mind, but our support YouTube channel is the second fastest growing YouTube channel at Salesforce. And
Really?
you think about Salesforce, think about like the marketing machine that it is, right? We have huge YouTube presences with some of our different clouds, etc. We're on course to hit 10 million lifetime views on our YouTube channel probably in the next couple of months.
Wow. Fascinating. Now, actually, one more thing to maybe double click on there that we haven't touched as much on is when we talk about end users, we talk about the people reaching out to support. I'm guessing that there's a pretty broad range, right? You have your casual, 5-seat plans, and then you have your
Yeah,
orgs. Have you thought about how you tailor
yeah,
one digital experience for that
yeah. It's
plan?
such a great question, Liz, because at Salesforce, like our customers scale from like a mom and pop shop
Yeah.
who has, maybe 5 licenses of Salesforce using Sales Cloud to massive enterprise customers, like you could imagine some of the customers we have. So we have an experienced design team and we think a lot about personas, right? We have different personas that contact us from different size customers. We focus a lot on an IT admin that tends to be, you think about them enterprises, them larger customers, they're the people who tend to submit cases, etc., for that large enterprise. But then, you have business decision makers. They're the people who are paying the money for Salesforce. Their experience needs to be different than what they're looking for. So we do a lot of work on our personas. End users is then the other one is they're the people that are actually using the Salesforce product, right? How do we get, like, you could be the sales manager at that company. How do we get to Liz, the sales manager, to give her content to help her with her onboarding on Salesforce so she can ramp up and be efficient? Very different than the admin who's probably trying to do something in the Salesforce structure of how it's set up, etc. So we have to spend a lot of time on personas, on customer types, experience design. It's not a one size fits all. It's impossible to be a one size fits all.
Absolutely. That's such a unique challenge because the great thing of unifying the experience is one entry point, but then you really have to guide, right? And
Yes.
build out those persona paths.
Yeah. And it's interesting. We done a lot of work a while ago where we did a lot of research. We brought in an external agency and, we were trying to understand like what are the jobs to be done? What are the journeys that our customers are on? And we
Wow.
really, when it all boiled down to it, we identified 2 journeys. And this is what my team really focuses on is you have the resolution journey, Liz, which is your traditional break fix, technical support, right? I have a problem and I need to get it resolved. And often the words we heard with that was quickly. When customers are in that moment of truth that they've got a problem, they want to get it resolved, speed is super important. So a
Yeah.
lot of our work is on that resolution. We work with our support teams to understand them case drivers and how do we get that knowledge out there. But the other big one is education, right? Is customers are new to a product. I want to learn how to use it. I want to onboard onto Salesforce. So a lot of my team's focus is around onboarding, education, right? How do we teach you, Liz, when we've got a new release? We do 3 big releases a year that,
Yeah.
hey, there's this new feature here, Liz. You should learn about this. If you're an IT admin, we want you to enable that in your environment. If you're an end user, we want Liz to know how to use pipeline inspection in Sales Cloud because it's going to help you sell more. So we spend a lot of time we think about them customer journeys at the center of our operating model, and it's all about that resolution and education. That's what we boil down to.
Fascinating. I feel like there's so much more to dive in there that we don't maybe quite have time to do today. But I know we're down to our last 5 minutes or so, Bernard.
Sure.
High level. What are your thoughts on sort of the future direction of digital customer support? We've talked about the new team structures, a lot of the new tools, but high level, what
Yeah.
are your thoughts?
Yeah. I think like if ever an industry was ripe for disruption by technology, it's support and success. If you look at the capabilities that are out there now, and I was just reading a Gartner analysis the other day where they're predicting by 2026, investment in generative AI will have reduced service agents by 20 to 30%. Just kind of like a crazy number when you think about it. And how we're going to look to do some of that is like we have Copilot. Copilot's going to be a product that we're going to launch on our help portal. It's going to be a product that's going to be inside our CRM solutions, etc. It's going to enable our customers. It's going to help them do things. So you think about that education scenario, it's going to be really big there, Liz. It's also going to be really big on issue resolution, right? Some of them easier cases that maybe an agent's handling today, we can handle through Copilot. And I still think we're going to get left with a lot of volume that our support engineers will need to handle still, but it'll be the more complex scenarios. That's where we'll really need their brain power. And we'll start to think about how we handle some of that lower, less complex volume through things like Copilot. And over time, I think you'll see that grow to how we think about this autonomous agent, right? Where it can really start to do things on your behalf, Liz, do things in the CRM for you, as an example. That's where I see the future going, is it will be about autonomous agents.
It's exciting. It's really leveling up the humans in the loop, right? Away from the road and away from some of the more less complex issues, if you will.
Yes. Yeah, totally. We will always have a need for our great support engineers. I know that for a fact.
I love it. No, it's exciting. And I feel like for once, customer support and client success is sort of the cool place to be if you're a
Yes.
tech, if
Yes.
you're an engineer,
Yes.
right?
Yeah, no longer just the cogs as many companies think about it, a cost of goods sale. Now really about driving revenue and adoption.
Yeah, no, I love it. I love it. Excited to see what that journey looks like. And then just as we close out here with the last few minutes, we have a rolling question that we do each week. Yours is
Okay.
from Joe Lynch, the head of customer experience at Dandy. We've touched a lot on bits and pieces of this, but overall, what digital tools are you experimenting with in 2024? And are there any specific KPIs you expect them to improve?
Yeah, we've touched on this a lot through the conversation. I think, Liz, like definitely like the AI capabilities we're launching at Salesforce. We have this thing called search answers, which is when you search, instead of just giving you a list of URLs, we'll actually give you the answer to that problem when you search in our search bar in our portal. We're doubling down on Copilot. We're going to launch Copilot on our help portal. And so we're really excited about these AI capabilities, and we're pushing really, really hard there. And I think your question, coming back to them metrics, self-help success, right, will enable more customers to be successful with self-help. And then
Yeah.
an offset of that is we'll drive case rate down, because more customers will get solved through these AI capabilities.
I love it. And I love that all of this self-help and designing the customer experience really, I think, comes down to not, necessarily just cost savings, but really optimizing the experience for the customer, right?
Totally.
Instead of the preconceived notions being immediate contact and immediate conversation, you're saying no. In a lot of instances, quickly being the phrase that you said customers ask for, in a lot of cases, the best solution for the customer is not a live contact, right?
Yes.
Something
Yeah.
immediate that solves their problem.
Yeah. And the big thing there, Liz, is we're helping to drive product adoption.
Yep.
right? So you're helping to, like, the more adoption you drive of a product, the more features a customer uses, the stickier that product becomes, and so it's critical to us that we're helping to drive product adoption.
I love it. Just increasing that cycle. Super cool. Well, Bernard, so last words here. So our next week's guest, Tanner Nelson, Director of Customer
Yeah.
Care at Logitech. Do you have a question that you'd love for Tanner to answer?
Yeah, I saw Tanner worked in Netflix in the past, and they're a company that I think from a technology perspective really interests me. So I'd love to understand from him, what pivotal lesson did he glean from his tenure at Netflix that's influenced his professional journey? I'd be really curious on that. And then on the fun side, favorite Netflix show. I'd have to know what his favorite Netflix show is.
I am also excited to see those answers. Bernard, thank you so much. And everyone else, thank you for joining us today on Plain Speak. Your participation really enriches our discussions. If you have any, CSCX inquiries or topics for future episodes, please reach out. And then come join us Wednesday, February 21st at 1 p.m. Eastern for our next episode with customer support expert Tanner Nelson from Logitech. Come join us, gain some deeper insights. Excited to have you. And Bernard, thank you again for spending
Thank you.
30 minutes with us.
Yeah, it was very enjoyable. Thank you for your time, Liz. Have a great day.